All right, hey, welcome to Fireside. We're in Venice, interview number 2. This is probably our biggest podcast day ever, with David Casson first and the Nick Baxter second. So you've got a strong act to follow. That guy's a good painter.
Yeah, he's amazing.
I watched him paint in the Face Off for the Portrait Society of America last year. So have you ever seen that? Have you ever been to that?
No.
The event itself is it's a lot of old people. It's a little stuffy, but but the first night they have like painters in groups of 3 and they have one model. They paint from the same model, and then and people, you can walk right up to their palettes and like talk to them and look at them while they're all working, and then they auction all of them off at the end of the thing.
Yeah.
It's really cool. So anyways, I got to watch him paint a little bit there. He's pretty good. So I said there was nothing I really wanted to talk about, but I changed my mind. I came up with something.
Okay.
I just finished this book, an Elon Musk book, right? And before that, I read this book called Bold by Peter Diamandis. Have you ever heard of him?
No.
So you know Elon Musk, though, Tesla and all that SpaceX.
Yeah.
So I started thinking, and I don't know many tattooers to talk about this kind of stuff too. So I started thinking, like Elon Musk, he goes into business and he goes straight against like Detroit, like the biggest car companies in the world, and NASA, right? So he takes on the giantest projects that he possibly can. Peter Diamandis talks about taking on like projects that there's no way that could be completed in your lifetime, so that you can't take the credit for them. Like to start something bigger than yourself, if it is his thing. And so you think about all these people, and I'm tattooing this guy right now who is studying children's brain tumors, like researching children's brain tumors. So then sometimes that makes you think, like no matter how great your day went, no matter how successful a painting was or a tattoo was, you really just drew a picture for the day. Like we really, are we doing anything that changes anyone's lives?
I think indirectly we are. It's more in the subtle energetic realm than, let's say, the very obvious physical realm or something like that.
Yeah. So where do you see, like, I mean, obviously in tattooing we're giving people what they want, changing their bodies, changing their self-image, I guess.
Yeah, it's a little more direct for sure.
Yeah.
Tattooing has more of a primal, hits on a more primal level. It has to do with how you look as a person and your self-image and the meaning incorporated into putting something in your own flesh. I think that's a very tangible thing, much more than fine art. But I think fine art acts on sort of the more subtle, emotional, energetic aspects of the psyche and makes the world a vibrant, interesting, inspiring place to be in instead of just being like robots.
Yeah. I know you have a lot of you're pretty active, like socially involved. You have a lot of your talk in Portland that we saw had a kind of a larger meaning outside of tattooing and outside of art. So do you feel like, I guess you do feel like that what you're doing on a daily basis is the best thing that you can do to move the world in the direction that you would like to see it go?
Well, it's my passion. I think it's I think it's my purpose here in this lifetime. Yeah. More so than other things. I could very well do tons of other things. I have other interests, but I don't have other deep passions as far as that overtake me as much as making art. So I do think that's my contribution to the human race in this lifetime and in this body and mind that I have right now.
Where is outside of tattooing? Well, let me back up. How's your time split right now? Are you tattooing as much as you're painting? Are you
right now? It's a little less. I'm working on a new series of paintings for a solo show later in the year. So I'm putting a lot of hours in the studio painting right now. A little bit less tattooing, but I tattoo usually 2 or 3 days a week, and they're always all-day appointments.
Right.
So.
And then you're painting basically every other day?
Every other day that I can, yeah.
Yeah. What are you sharing the subject matter of the new series or the?
It's all related. Okay, well, the series is going to be called Blood Rituals, I think. That's a working title, but I think I'm pretty solid with that title. And it has to do with the symbolism of blood as a life force and the body, the physical body as a container for that life force. And the symbolism is buried 2 or 3 layers back in the subject matter, like you're not going to see like human bodies and human hearts and stuff. But so it's going to be a little bit sort of esoteric, and it's going to hopefully engage the viewer to have to think about the symbolism, and hopefully is intriguing to people.
Yeah, yeah. So it's not. So it's blood rituals, but you're not using necessarily a lot of the imagery that you've used in some of these past shows that used kind of flesh and blood and things like that.
There's definitely blood in every painting, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the one unifying visual element of the whole series, of course. But then, a few years ago, I did a show at Last Rites Gallery in New York City, Paul Booth's place, featuring all like surgery paintings, like weird, surrealistic, semi-distorted, mysterious surgery scenes. So this is a departure from that, but obviously it still has a theme of like, the corporal, like human body and blood and stuff, because it's always been an intrigue of mine, something that amazes and fascinates me.
Yeah, yeah. You're it seems like you're painting a lot of landscapes now. Did you go and do a workshop or two, like an alla prima workshop?
Yeah, so I've always loved the outdoors. I've always loved nature and hiking. It's been a real big interest and passion and way to relax in my life. And it was always in conflict with the time I want to spend in the studio painting. Like, I should really get outside. But then when I'm outside, I'm like, I'm not being productive painting.
Right.
So I found a way to I always wanted to combine the two, and I just never had the little nudge I needed from an outside inspiration, and I got that nudge last April at the Paradise Art Retreat in New Mexico, where I took a short seminar by Dan Marshall, who's a tattooer who paints watercolor landscapes. And
he's here this weekend, right?
He's here this weekend.
Yeah, we're supposed to podcast with him. I haven't met him yet, though. I might get you to point him out to me.
Okay, I will. Yeah, he's a really funny guy. Super nice and very knowledgeable in plein air watercolor painting. So I sort of took some of the concepts that he showed us with watercolor and started using them in my preferred medium of oil painting, and it just instantly clicked. It was just something I knew I always wanted to do, and as soon as I did, I fell in love with combining those two things that I really like in my life. So then I wanted more specific instruction with oil. So then I took a 4-day intensive workshop in the White Mountains of New Hampshire later, a few months after that Dan Marshall seminar, led by a very experienced instructor who's in the Hudson River School. So he's from that tradition.
What was his name? Do you remember?
I'm drawing a blank on his name, which sucks, but he's an amazing painter. It may come to me during the course of this conversation.
Right.
But anyway, so that kind of steered me, gave me more specific info that I needed in regards to working with oil outdoors and in the sunlight and the elements and the changing shadows and light and everything.
Yeah.
So that was amazing. And
Are you using hooked? Yeah. Are you using medium in your alla prima painting, or are you just using solvents, or just using thinner, or what?
It depends on the pigment. So some pigments are very thick and pasty, and sometimes you do have to loosen those up with a little bit of medium. And it also depends on the atmospheric conditions. Like, say, if you're in a sunny, dry climate, you're gonna need to loosen things up a bit with solvent, probably, and medium. So it just depends. It's like a case by case basis. It's just a tool in the toolbox to use where appropriate.
Yeah. So everyone knows that you're well known for a lot of very like close up textural elements. A lot of your photography is very like tight shots. What did you find some challenges in, like, did you get overwhelmed looking at a landscape and trying to figure out how to build a composition from it?
Oh, totally. Yeah. So one of the main artistic sort of technical reasons why I wanted to undertake landscape painting was because I've always been so obsessed with macro. Small depth of field, still life painting, which is shallow depth of field, of course. And I needed to expand my artistic skill set. So the best way to do that is to paint huge depth of field, atmospheric perspective, and great distances between the eye and the subject. So it's been a major challenge.
I would imagine. I know
it's been difficult.
Yeah, I'm sure. I know it is for me, you render so fully a lot of. I would imagine you fight the urge to render way more than you should. And
Absolutely.
yeah.
That's been okay. So that's yet another technical painting reason why I wanted to like expand my skill set, was to attempt to work looser, to work more quick and intuitive, and to not get hung up rendering precise details too much.
Yeah.
It's still satisfying when I'm able to do that in my plein air painting, but a lot of times if you're working during a sunset, you really have literally only minutes.
Yeah.
And so you got to be loose and quick and gestural and very intuitive.
Yeah. Does it, I mean, and I would imagine you're being a lot more gestural. You're probably not able to blend like you tend to blend for that kind of, really
it's an
focused kind
alla
of realism.
prima approach where you match the color, you mix it, and you are confident and efficient with your paint stroke.
Yeah.
You just see it, you mix it, you put it on.
Yeah. Has it brought anything to your tattooing, do you think?
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, first of all, if I'm asked to tattoo any kind of nature scenery, I'm much more able to do that. It's much easier for me. And just the efficiency and the confidence aspect that I just described of you see something, you accurately interpret it, you make your decision, and you don't look back.
Yeah. I would imagine, I mean, in compositionally, especially working in say from a landscape and trying to break down and build a composition, you're really starting very abstractly and trying to like break down shapes into something that looks pleasing on the canvas. Have you always approached your tattooing that way because it has always been so highly rendered? Have you always started with kind of abstraction and thought about dark and light first and then worked to the image, or have you started with the image and the...
Early in my tattoo career, I mean, I was 18 when I started, and I had 1.5 years of art school training before I dropped out of art school to be a tattooer. I didn't pay attention to any of that stuff. It was, you're just young and just excited, and it's like a kid in a candy store,
right,
with a fun new medium. And every year, as my career has progressed, I've now been tattooing for 18 years. More and more, I go back actually to the fundamentals that you described, and everything's as simple as I can make it, and build complexity from that simplicity.
Yeah.
But the simplicity is the absolute prerequisite to the complexity. Instead of starting with the whole like kid in the candy store mentality where there's just colors and shapes and lines and you're just putting it all into some chaotic soup. It doesn't make any sense or look that good.
Yeah. I've only recently broken it down that far in tattooing. That is, I can't remember whose workshop it was. I've done several workshops lately, but someone was working. We photographed the model the first day, and then we pulled the model into Photoshop the second day, and he was just trying to push contrast a little and kind of form a composition, and he added a layer on top of it, and he just divided the value scale in half and went black and white, and he just tried to find shapes that were interesting in whatever size his canvas was going to be, and then he made that. Then he moved the model until she kind of fit that pattern, and I thought, wow, what an interesting way. So I've been drawing on a Cintiq, and so I've been taking some of these larger scale pieces, just taking a photo of the person's arm, and without considering the imagery, just using like an overlay, and not black and white, but using like an overlay where I can burn their skin, and just using the simplest shapes and just finding something that looks different than the last thing I did, and then trying to build from that. It's really it's a different way for me to approach it, and it's some unique solutions that I think you find that way.
Yeah, I totally endorse that method, and I've done it in some of the workshops that I've taken. I took a figure painting workshop years ago, and that was the very first class was you can only do black or you can only do white. And it forces you to make a value decision. If it's 50% or less, it's white. If it's 50% or darker, it's black.
Yeah.
And it forces you to see simple shapes with clear distinctions of light and shadow.
Right.
And that's building the skill of seeing, not just looking passively, but actively seeing something and breaking it down. And the more that becomes second nature to you and more habitual, you just instantly just look at anything and you break it into where the light's coming from, where the shadow's coming from, and the basic shapes of it. And then anything else is an artistic decision based on that necessary foundation.
Yeah, and if you stick to that underlying structure, then everything will always make sense because if
It'll be cohesive. Yeah.
right, then you don't end up with like you're saying, if you split the value scale down the middle, if you know that this is your family of lights, then you're not going to go past that fourth step of value or whatever you're
Exactly.
and then so your darkest dark or your lightest dark is still always darker than your darkest light.
It just heads off so many problems early on. You just don't even get into these problems because you've already set the structure with this really solid visual foundation that makes logical sense, and all you have to do is build upon it.
Yeah, yeah. When is the show that you're doing in the fall?
So it's going to be at Sacred Gallery in New York City. I believe they're in Soho in New York City. And it's going to be, they told me in November, I think. Okay. So, yeah, November, Sacred Gallery, New York City.
How did that come about? Do you have a representation in New York, or did you just?
No, I mean, I had previously shown at Last Rites Gallery, and nice. I haven't shown with them in several years, and I just had some connections through Sacred Gallery, and they wanted to show some work by me, and I seized the opportunity. So
yeah, that's great.
I will add to that they show primarily tattooers who paint or make fine art, so that's sort of like obvious, like an obvious in for me.
Right. You've had solo shows before, or no? Is this your first?
Yeah, this would be like my fourth or something. Yeah.
Are they pretty well received? I mean, do they sell well? Because your subject matter is sometimes a little like
I mean, so Last Rites, their specialty is dark, macabre, or stuff that their clientele and their buyers are very into and used to seeing. So my stuff isn't shocking at all in that context.
Yeah.
So those shows did okay.
Huh.
I'm definitely sold a respectable amount. Like I didn't sell out any of my shows. I don't think I have a huge enough fine art following. Right. Maybe necessarily for that. Hopefully I'll get there someday. But yeah.
Well, that's so many people feel like they can't, like they're kind of pigeonholed if they're trying to get into a fine art career as far as their subject matter goes. Yeah. And so it's nice to see.
I mean, the market almost dictates that. It commands that, honestly, and that's something I don't like. I've bucked that trend as much as I can. I paint what I want to paint, and if I want to suddenly start painting landscapes, I'm going to paint landscapes. Right. And maybe I'll get a following in the landscape crowd, and they won't even care about all this other stuff I do. Right. I'll be like, I just won't confine my self-expression to what the market demands just to make $1, basically. Yeah. I mean, I can afford to do that, of course, because I have tattooing, so there's that.
Yeah, yeah, that makes it a little easier with the secondary source of income.
Yeah.
As far as tattooing, are you still are you working at all? You had just started working on or had built kind of a home studio the last time we talked, but weren't tattooing out of it. Are you tattooing out of it, or are you?
No, just a painting studio, and tattooing at Shaman Modifications in downtown Austin.
Yeah, that's a really nice space. It's a small space up there.
It's a little crowded with 4 of us if we're all working.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know. It's no more crowded than a convention. It's it's less crowded than a convention. So
yeah, and people are. What I thought was cool about it, I came up. I don't know how long ago it was now, a year or two ago, and you were tattooing me, and there were a couple of people that were painting in their stations, so it's is that a pretty regular thing? Are people kind of like painting and tattooing out of their spaces there?
Yeah,
that's really nice.
It's just a creative atmosphere. It's not limited to one thing. It's just a creative space.
To
be yourself.
And the downstairs area do you guys show art down there? Is it a gallery?
Yeah, so we've had a few just kind of very informal, friendly openings, just more like get-togethers featuring art that's for sale. And I taught a still life painting workshop down there. There were 12 students plus me. Huh. And we filled up the room, and I set up 2 different still life setups and divided the room in half and gave instruction throughout the course of an 8-hour day.
How did that feel? Was that your first workshop?
Yeah, that was the first workshop I ever gave. I've given plenty of lectures where it's not an interactive, actual working process. It's just me doing demonstrations and talking. So this was the first actual workshop with, hands-on teaching, and everyone's painting, and I'm right behind them giving them advice.
Yeah. Is that something you think you'd like to do more of, or?
I would. It's rewarding and fulfilling, but I found it completely exhausting. It's very demanding on your energy because you have to be present to every individual student's needs and their personal challenges, and you sort of get to know you have to get to know what they need from you all day long.
Yeah.
So one person's going to constantly need reminders about this one thing, but then you go over here and you got to shift gears because this person's a little maybe behind that person, and you got to like break it down even simpler for that person.
Right.
So I found it incredibly exhausting,
Yeah.
but fun and rewarding. If it feels good to give some valuable artistic knowledge to people who want it.
Yeah. What was it? Mostly tattooers in that?
Yeah, I think it
workshop?
was all tattooers. Well, actually, except for one non-tattooer.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I said, I do workshops fairly regularly, and it is funny to go out like maybe to dinner afterwards with the instructor, and they always seem drained, and you always think like, man, you just walked around and talked to people all day, but really you're problem solving, and you're trying to
it's mentally draining.
Yeah, and trying to put things into to a language that that person understands. I think has to be sometimes a challenge.
And if you see someone struggling and they're visibly getting frustrated during the class, it's like you kind of take that on as a teacher, like, okay, how can I really work to solve this person's problem? Like, I don't want them to leave feeling like they got nothing from my class, or and that I couldn't help them through their problems. So sometimes that could be taxing if you have a student who's really struggling.
Yeah, I'm sure. Austin, are you planning? I mean, you still like it there? Planning to stick around?
Yeah, no plans to move just yet. I don't feel tied there for the rest of my life, but I still love it right now, so it's fun. Yeah. It works.
Tattooing has just blown up there, huh?
It really has, even in the short time I've lived there. And I've lived there for 7 years, and I've seen it just, now it's crazy.
Yeah, it is. Every time I go, I feel like I walk past more shops. They're just everywhere.
Yeah, more shops and more diverse artists. That's the main change I've seen. There were still a lot of shops there when I first moved 7 years ago, but now, it was like only traditional, and then like I was the weirdo who came into town or whatever, but and I still don't know many Austin tattooers because it's very secluded into the traditional realm. Traditional mindset, but now that's totally exploded, and there's like getting to be this huge variety of artists, tattooers that are there, and starting to network with some more people there, and so that's cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are you taking on new projects, tattoo projects at all, or are you just working on existing pieces? Or
I just took on a few very large projects, like huge torso pieces, like a large leg sleeve. So right now the books are pretty much closed until I can get a handle on these and figure out when they're going to be completed, and then I'll probably hopefully open them back up maybe towards the end of the year or something.
Yeah, cool. Well, I think we said it all, man. Is he saying we need to go do that thing? So we're good? Okay. Well, thanks. Man, thank you so much. Yeah. So if people want to see your work, the best place is nickbaxter.com, or Painting is a different website now.
Painting is the letter N, like my first name, Nick, the letter N, and then Baxter.com. So nbaxter.com is like strictly fine art painting. I have an art blog where I give instructional painting advice or talk about the symbolism in my work or just whatever I feel like blogging about. And then nickbaxter.com, all one word, is my tattoo website. Yeah,
and it has some photography and stuff on it still?
Yeah, some like random other mediums that I've dabbled in. You can see it all there as well,
Yeah. Are you active in that? You have a forum on that site as well. Is it very active anymore?
No, man, I completely let that go to seed. Like, I haven't even gone on there in like years now. So I'm sorry if anyone has been on there and it's like a dead scene, like a total like graveyard. But there. You should be able to still search the archives, and there's tons of good info in the archives. There really is.
I've been on it's been a long time for me too, but I've been on that forum before. I've fallen in it just through Google searches, like just done a Google search on a subject, and that pulls up on the first page. So it must be putting out.
Thanks, Gabe Ripley, tattoonow.com.
Oh, yeah, perfect. It's like the internet whiz, I guess. All right, well, I mean, I know you already know his work, but check it out. Paintings are for sale on the Baxter site?
Yes, paintings are for sale. If it's for sale, it says available.
Perfect. Check it out. Thank you, guys. Tattooimprovement.com. Subscribe.